This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation. Welcome back to PTBN's NBA Team Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Reich. I am joined by Adam Murray. Adam, we got a lot of summertime cleanup to do. Obviously, during the finals, we had a lot of news and notes, so we're going to probably hit on that first, to be quite honest.
Summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the biggest, here's the thing. You know, when the finals are going on, the draft's coming up, people want to know what their draft picks are going to be when they go into free agency and whatnot. So the trade talk kicks really into high gear right around that time. And we actually had two that got pulled off one about a week ago, the other literally right before we were getting ready to record the show, which involves since it's an odd number year, I guess that means Kevin Durant's getting traded again, because he got traded in 2019, he got traded in 2023, and now in 2025 Kevin Durant is now a Houston Rocket.
The drama, where is he going to go? Well, where does he want to play?
My opinion on that is Durant is just one of those very few first name basis NBA superstars that casual people know. So the moment his name is in the trade talks, like, they can't get the word out of their, like, it like spills out of the talking heads mouths like constantly. And that's all they hang up on. The thing about Durant is that as good as he is, as efficient as he is, and his numbers are wildly good still, even on a bad Suns team at the time.
I believe he's 36 now.
Okay. I mean, he's long in the tooth, and this is the last year of his contract. So the Rockets are taking a calculated risk here.
Yeah, start of the season he'll be 37, and the way it goes, I was gonna say the way the new CBA is, there is you can't build out long-term strategies now. If you're going to go all in, you can only go in for 2 years due to the double tax. You could do the double tax for a year.
The salaries have to match, right?
And
it can't even be like a 70% match. It has to almost be to the dollar match.
As you've seen, like, the Celtics are like, oh no, we're getting out of it immediately. And other teams are like, oh no, we don't even want to tread into that area due to all these problems. And with Durant trade, we'll get that to a second. It only gives them a 2-year window because Durant's going to be making $50-60 million. You have Şengün on a max deal. Thompson is only 2 years away from his max deal or a hefty raise. So they're going to be in double tax territory. It's very difficult to keep a high price team together. And then in that case, you have to jettison Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith. You can't afford to pay your entire bench, which is the problem all these teams with big price 3 superstars at the beginning have.
Yeah, and we just saw an NBA Finals where you have to be about 7 or sometimes 8 deep in order to just stay afloat in the playoffs, because injuries are going to happen. You know, we saw Tyrese Halliburton get hurt in the finals. Things happen, and you have to have backup. And the Rockets had the depth. And I had to say that in the past tense, because they gave up Jalen Green, a really good guard who, yes, it's admitted, it's been muddied all over the place this summer, had a terrible first round series performance against the Warriors. But in the regular season, this was his best year. They also got Dylan Brooks, who has a couple of years left on at around 20 million. And they got the 10th, and the Suns get the 10th pick in the back. So all this mockery about how the Suns had no draft picks. Now they have 2. The 5 seconds, I think, was just fluff to patch up the fact that Durant had a $54 million salary. And even though Green's getting a raise, it wasn't enough along with Brooks to make up the difference. So that's how
the 5 seconds is, you know, that's 4 seconds is for anybody these days. Seems to be the going rate. I mean, right. Jay Crowder went for 5 seconds, so that you could just
and I do want to talk about the Sun side of it in a second. The more important one, and the one that's going to be talked about a lot, is what's going to happen with the Rockets. The Rockets are clearly better from it. I think there's question marks to it that we, as we are talking right now, don't know. Will Durant sign an extension? Is this part of the agreement? We don't know that yet. will Fred VanVleet get his team option turned down and he'll sign for less to make it easier to add people and get into the under the tax to get someone in the mid-level exception to boost their backcourt now that they don't have Green? There's other questions that we don't have answers to.
Well, okay, starting from the Houston side, it does have a lot of questions because you've lost essentially your backcourt now. You have Van Fleet, who, yeah, like you said, they'll decline his option and sign him probably, 30-35 million dollars a year. They'll get
it won't be 45 million basically.
No, it'll be probably 35. You're gonna fit Durant in. You got 2 years. So you got where's Durant playing? So you have to move Thompson to the 2, and then you got Tyree.
I would play Durant at the 4, to be quite honest with you.
Well, you got Şengün and you got Jabari Smith Jr., who you've kept.
Yeah.
So Jabari
Smith, and we talked about this on the rookie extension episode. He's up for that. So now what happens there?
Yeah, and again, you have Cam Whitmore. Okay, so Reed Shepard is going to now slide into the 2 spot. You've got a very thin backcourt, and again, Whitmore, Eason, Thompson, Jabari Smith, and Kevin Durant, same kind of area. You got too many bodies in one area, not enough. So they're going all in on this. And
they also secured a very small extension for Steven Adams about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so as the backup center. So
right.
And they can, you have Thompson who can recover for Durant's lapses in defense and due to age and whatnot. So it works in that sense. It's just if Van Vliet gets hurt, you have so what? They'll get Jones, get Trey Jones,
whoever they can talk, whoever Rafal Stone can talk into taking the mid-level exception. That's really what it's going to come down to.
It just leaves them very thin at the guard spots. For Phoenix, all they have are guards now. Their entire team, you've added Green and Brooks to go with Booker and Beal.
Let's be fair. Jalen Green is a good player. He's very young. Good. He's got a player option in 2027, so he has options on his own. That we talked about this when the extensions were done in last October, when it was Şengün and Jalen Green back to back getting deals, and Alperen got more years and more money than Jalen, and it was obvious. They want to keep their options open with Jalen Green just in the event that he doesn't take the leap and they can move him more easily than Şengün. Lo and behold, he had a disappointing postseason performance, and I guess that was enough to talk themselves into parting ways with him in order to get a superstar. Kevin Durant is still a superstar. Kevin Durant averaged 25.6 rebounds and 5 assists. He's an awesome player.
He is, but there was no team who was going to give him 7 first-round picks.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
as his age has gone on, and I don't know. He didn't want to sign him in a resign Minnesota. You don't need him to resign. If this is, if he didn't get traded, I was gonna tell you this would have been Kawhi to Toronto. It's a 1-year rental. This is your window. You go for it. If it fails, well, we tried.
On paper, that's what the team looks like. That team's good enough to be at that level if the cards go right for them.
So Phoenix, this is not the end of what we're going to do with them, because
but let me tell you, let me twist this. Let me twist this narrative. A lot of people are saying Green's going to get flipped again. I don't think so. I think Brooks and Allen are going to get flipped.
I think Brooks will get flipped as well as he can with Green. I don't know what his return would be. You can trade straight up small for big in that sense. However, he's a better piece than, again, we mentioned Beal and Booker. There's your 2 and 3 right there. And they got nobody else to supplant them.
The only other conspiracy theory is that they brought in Jalen Green because they're going to threaten, and I say that with quotations, threaten Bradley Beal and say, we're just going to sit you and you could sit at home.
And then he'll get a buyout.
And that'll talk. Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. They're trying to do that would be a mind game of trying to talk him into waiving his no trade clause. Bradley Beal was a Washington Wizard. He's going to wait this out. He is not going to waive his no trade clause.
Oh no, he'll just take this year he can't get cut and extended because of his high salary. So yeah, he'll sit the year and then they'll buy him out next year for $56 million and he's off to another team. But that doesn't bode well for Phoenix, who doesn't need to essentially rebuild. Trading Durant for if you could flip Brooks, Green, you don't need to flip Green because
They're
again,
gonna
like
want
you mentioned,
first. They're gonna want multiple firsts for Green. They could, but why? I would just keep them.
yeah, you'd keep him, but Brooks can get you that big man you need, as they don't have a big man, nor do they seem to have that's the number 10 pick. They'll probably have to now draft one. But
yeah, and we'll talk about that on the draft side of things. I think they're gonna get a big man. They need, obviously you talked about how many guards they got. They need people above 6'8". That's what they need on the team at this point.
And you wanted to talk about the Desmond Bane trade.
That happened before that. That was a bit of a stunner. A lot of people were thinking that the Grizzlies were shopping around Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant, and the one who got traded was, in my opinion, was their most dependable player, Desmond Bane. Obviously older. He started on a rookie max deal a couple of years ago. I was a little confused of why they did it. Then I saw how many picks they got in return, which was 4 firsts and swaps, a combination of all of those things. It actually is 5 if you count the pick swap in 2029. So, and then they also get Cole Anthony and KCP.
It is a very high price to pay for Orlando.
And the Magic just get Bane and nothing else.
That's all they need. They have enough depth and roster spots to do what they want.
It's similar to the Rockets. They're top heavy in terms of salary, but is that team good enough to make a move in the East? Yes.
They saw that this is their 2-year window. That's what they have. And then if they need to ship off, probably not Paolo, it'll probably be Wagner, because you can't have 3 of those price guys with Jalen Suggs. Their roster is completely...
Well, they're already in the tax. So now you're going to have to start doing those crunches involving Mo Wagner's team option, Gary Harris's team option, the team option of Corey Joseph. Do you want to keep Goga Badazzi at that price? So that now they have to make those decisions.
Yeah, and the Jonathan Isaac $15 million is no longer a luxury, but sort of
right.
But for 2 years we're like, Orlando needs offense. They need shooting. They just need a guy.
And they got it. Desmond Bane's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league.
So it's perfect. Extremely high price for him. The same way we said Rudy Gobert was extremely high price for Minnesota. However, that trade seems to be working out well for Minnesota and has to this point. So hopefully Orlando, they paid a high price, but most of those picks aren't going to be on that team anyways.
New York is coachless. They also have to look at the scope of the East. New York at this point is coachless. The Boston Celtics are basically going to take a mulligan. The Philadelphia 76ers, you don't even know if that nucleus is going to be together next year. And you don't even know if Giannis is going to be a buck. So you're just going to take your chances.
You got Cleveland and Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So they see themselves, if we could get the top 3, sneak in, this is our time with this sort of.
And I agree about the window
bump
being that short, being 1 to 2 years, because this coming year is the last year of the rookie scale for Paolo. Then his eventual, which will be agreed upon this summer, rookie max will kick in the year after that in 26, 27. So this is the year where you can actually add people, try to get right below the tax. If you get rid of, like we had already said, Isaac, Wagner, Harris, you can get under the tax, get someone with the mid-level exception, and have a playoff ready team. See how far you get. After that, you're in the tax and you can't really do much of anything. What do you think about Memphis' side?
I was just going to say, on the flip side, I don't know what Memphis is doing. This is also a first of many trades, I believe, because you don't have a backup for him. There's no shooter on that team now. You can say we're going to move Jalen Wells to that spot and we're going to pay Santi Aldama and Jaren Jackson Jr., but that team just got incredibly worse. Not bad. They took a step. This is the West we're talking about, where the lottery and 5th place are essentially like a 5-game swing. And they just went.
Yeah, I think Zach Kleiman gave himself away here. I think before this trade went down, there was probably conventional wisdom that if one of those 3 stars that they had at that point was going to get traded or get floated around, it was Jaren Jackson Jr., because he was going to demand more money for an extension. And they just got Zach Edey, who isn't amazing yet, but he can be a starting center in the NBA as he proved in the playoffs. So you're thinking, okay, we got our replacement. Let's ship out Jackson. It went the other way and they went with Bane. So now you got John Morant at the lead at the backcourt position. I think he's safe in terms of trades unless somebody just gives Memphis an amazing offer, something like five
But that's the
firsts and
thing.
a star. That'd be the only way John Morant gets traded. Jaren Jackson Jr. is actually eligible for a renegotiating extension, and it's very likely that that's what's going to happen.
But that's the thing. You're not trading 5 picks in the future if you're looking at winning now. So they know kind of next year they're out of the picture and they're going to take a step back. So, you fire your coach, you bring in the new coach, you want to install this new system around Morant. Okay, maybe this new system doesn't have much of this sort of, player that Bane is. I just don't know, like you said, if that was the right one to take.
Yeah, and you get the draft picks with it. One of them actually is a pick that's coming up this year, and they have had a history of drafting well. Jalen Wells, before he had that freak injury late in the season, Scottie Pippen Jr. was a revelation late, even though he was a two-way player for a year or two. They just find a way to find good players. Cole Anthony and KCP, I don't know. They're not guys that I don't think they're guys that Kleiman necessarily wanted. They were just the ones that, from a salary standpoint, fit to make the Bane trade possible.
Yeah, they're just salary. Cole Anthony will be the de facto
I think KCP can
backup.
fit. I think KCP can fit on that team.
But it's a downgrade.
It is.
And would you be willing to go? Is you better off with Wells and Pippen as your wings, or is KCP? Or maybe this was just he didn't fit in Orlando and he could become that Nuggets player.
Cole Anthony, I think everyone saw that coming. By the time we got to the playoffs, I'm forgetting the name. Jamal Mosley, the head coach, he didn't even play Cole Anthony. Like, he barely played.
No,
so you could tell he was on the outs.
Also, Scottie Pippen Jr. was undrafted and
he
had a stint with the Lakers before he moved over to Memphis.
He did, but he found his calling there in Memphis after the bouncing around.
That's not neither here or there. Speaking of neither here or there, we had the most, I don't want to say underwhelming finals ever, or I'll just say the least hyped, because your ESPN shelled out all this money for it and they can't even be bothered really covering it.
No. And the saddest part is that this is actually the final year of their old television contract, the one that they agreed to a decade ago. The new one kicks in starting next year, but ESPN/Disney paid the most, so they have first dibs on everything, including the finals. I've heard about the criticisms of Mike Breen and how he might be kind of losing his magic, and that Doris Burke might be on the way out, and that they might reshuffle everything, which is just par for the course for ESPN. Every time they want to rattle things, they just decide, oh, we're going to change up our production and we're going to put more Pat McAfee and Stephen A in it. The one thing that's different this time is that they're outsourcing inside the NBA. So they have Shaq, Chuck, and Ernie and Kenny to basically take care of all that coverage, and they know that the fans are going to watch it. I don't know how much I don't know how seriously people need to take their NBA coverage anymore.
They do. I mean, it's just like I was going to say, it'll be Stephen A. Smith and Perk commentating. Yeah. It's just it's unwatchable trying to watch them.
And let's be fair, there are smart people in that building. Brian Windhorst is very smart. Kevin Pelton is very smart. Iman Shumpert, who he had a stint on Dancing with the Stars and stuff. He's not a dummy. Like, these guys know how to talk about basketball. Even Kendrick Perkins, when he's not trying to throw out slogans, he actually knows how to talk about basketball when he's forced to. The problem is that's not the format that they choose.
Nope. They just want Stephen A. Smith to rant about the Knicks coaching search or what the Cowboys are doing this week.
And the fact that the Durant trade happened the same day as Game 7. So that's going to dominate the talk.
Yeah, it's going to be all Durant talk. Okay,
But Adam, you got to understand this. This is not something new. This happened when LeBron was a free agent in 2010, And they were, instead of talking about a Lakers Celtic 7-game series, they were obsessed with talking about where's LeBron going in free agency. Like, this is nothing new.
But the Lakers and the Celtics had much of names to people could ignore it. Here, as we had mentioned in the previews, there has been no hype for it. There's been no, well, we know what Halliburton could do.
No,
We
because
know.
the thing is they are now obsessed with, well, what can the league do to make it more interesting? Like, that was the narrative of the NBA finals. Like, it reminded me of when I was a kid and the Marlins and the Indians made the World Series and everybody was like, well, nobody's going to care about that. Well, it wound up being actually one of the most exciting World Series, and it went 7 games and extra innings. And in turn, I thought the finals was very fun. Very fun.
Okay. Well, with that said, let's get into the finals.
Yep, let's hit the NBA Finals. And a 7-game NBA Finals. It was the first one we've had since 2016. Now, the one in 2016 obviously was the Cavaliers and the Warriors, big hub to do, 3-1 comeback. It was also, before that, it was the first road Game 7 victory since 1978. And that was the Bullets and the Sonics. So this one goes 7 games. And as it usually goes, Adam, the home team did win, which was the 68-14 Oklahoma City Thunder, but against a very game, offensively very skilled and would not die unkillable type of Pacer team.
I would like to say we had all the hoopla of Game 7 and the potential backfiring of the buses being out, but much like 2 other times.
When you're saying the buses being out, you mean the fact
Oklahoma
that they
City
had the NBA
championship
champion
bus,
decals
yeah.
out there. Here's the thing, Adam. We have all these shirts and caps before we go out. We had one time where the NBA, the Larry O'Brien trophy was being rolled out for the Spurs, and Ray Allen hit the shot, and he told him to roll it back out. So yeah, that's happened many times.
But it still just would create an awkward. Well, that's what you get. But much like twice before, when you have one of your star players go out with an Achilles tear.
Yeah, that Tyrese Halliburton, just a bummer. And the things, the regular. Here's the thing, and we talked about this when the season ended. When I think of this past season, the thing I'll think about first and foremost is the Luka Doncic trade, the absolute fleecing of the Lakers getting Luka Doncic from the Mavericks and not giving up really much of anything. I mean, but that's neither here nor there. In the postseason, I'm going to remember 3 things. SGA's dominance, because he won regular season MVP, finals MVP. He was the best player on the best team. Tyrese Halliburton's heroics, making all those miraculous shots, making all the plays, which ended, unfortunately, with the Achilles tear because he had a calf strain. By the way, sidebar, anytime there's a calf strain now to any player, regardless of whether they're superstars or just mid-level stars, they are going to be out for months. That's going to be the new trend going with calf strains. That's just one take there. The third thing I'm going to remember is that the Thunder are the youngest squad to win an NBA championship. So there is some weird outliers here for this championship, but the Thunder were a dominant team. They had a good defense. The thing is, the Pacers did adjust well to them defensively and offensively and kind of kept them on their toes.
They did, and Halliburton winning that game 1 changed a lot of things, but in the end, we had mentioned last year they were too young and knew what they needed to. They knew the holes in which they needed to replace.
Last year when they lost to Dallas, yeah, they weren't ready.
And so what do? They got Hartenstein and they got Caruso to shore up their defense. And oh, look, they became the team everybody, you expected them to be on the way back. However,
and they had a lot of ancillary parts. Dort would make these winning plays. He'd also make some stupid plays, and he would get owned. He had some games where he struggled. Case and Wallace, I was begging the Thunder to take him off the court because I thought he was killing him in the lineups. In terms of like giving up easy baskets to TJ McConnell, who almost became a hero in the third quarter of Game 7 because he almost single-handedly brought him back in that game, even after the Halliburton injury. The thing, though, is that it really was a 2-man show. It was SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, averaged like somewhere around 30 points a game, 5 assists, 6 5 rebounds. And Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams in game 5 scored 40 points. Those two guys just, I wouldn't say refused to lose, because they did have their struggles in big moments, especially SGA in game 6. He stunk in game 6. But when it really came down to the tiebreakers and trying to win them, they came through. Yes, there's the controversy involving the Scott Foster game in game 4, and you can't escape it. That's why, that's why they call Scott Foster the extender. A lot of people see him as, he's the guy whose job it is to call the fouls on the team that's up 2-1, so we get a 2-2 series.
Well, let's just take the conspiracy hats off for one game.
No, but the calls down the stretch of that game were incredibly fishy.
They're par for the course with all of them. Again, game 7, you would hope for a more competitive game, and they kept it. Indiana was up at halftime, but you knew, this wasn't it did not vibe well. They could have been the greatest underdog team to win of all time, and it would have been a huge story, but
it would have been the most unlikely NBA champion of all time.
I will just take from it the injuries of everything, and we don't have Halliburton next year. So Indiana, okay, we're gonna
because an Achilles tear is a year-long injury. You were out for a calendar year,
and this was the last. This was the last game of the season, so he will be, if he comes back early, it'll be literally for the first round.
It's also really sad that we've gotten to a point where we've seen enough of these Achilles tears where you can literally diagram it as you watch it. Where when it happened and Halliburton was screaming in pain, a torn Achilles tendon, it's almost like a sniper shoots you in the back of your foot. That's what it feels like. And you could just see him writhing. And now that we've seen it with Durant, we've seen it with Lillard, we've seen it with Tatum. Now there's a narrative. If you have a calf strain and you overextend and you don't pivot right, you might pop your Achilles. And I just wonder now, Adam, if we're going to get to a new regiment where if teams have superstars and they have a calf strain of some sort based on the x-rays or whatever it is they're looking at for that, they're going to have to shut down that player for multiple months. It's almost to the level of a sprained MCL or a torn ACL. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. It depends, because the players are like, "Oh, I'm fine," and the trainers are like,
strain. Well, calf strain is not a torn muscle; it's a strained muscle, of course. But now you're seeing the consequence of it.
Yeah,
right.
Also, we had said that Tatum and Halliburton also played in the Olympics, so they played so many extra games. They had no time to rest. But I guess in the end, just sort of wrapping up this finals, it's fitting that this whole Oklahoma City team, we didn't get respect. Nobody cares about them. And all we're doing right now is just talking about injuries and load management, as opposed to, can they, this was the greatest SGA, where does he rank in the grades? Nobody's putting him, which is a shame, because he should be celebrated for this season's feats. But
that's what I was gonna say. It's one of the most dominant single seasons ever. It's on the level of Shaq in 2000 and some of Jordan's dominant years. I would definitely say that in a single season, Shea was the most dominant player in the league. He was the best guard. He got the most free throws, regardless of how much people call him a free throw merchant. You have to earn it. And that's what I'll also say about game 7. That's one of those ones where, and obviously Scott Foster didn't officiate that one, where may the best team win. The gloves are off. You got to go out there and win. You'd mentioned how the Pacers were leading at halftime in game 7 when Halliburton had hurt himself 7 minutes in. And I give a lot of credit to guys like Ben Mathurin. Ben Mathurin played his ass off. He didn't play efficiently, but he played his ass off. McConnell, I already said. Siakam was kind of quiet, but in that game 7, but I think it was because he was constantly being double teamed because he was killing him most of the series. The thing is, though, what I liked about what the Pacers did in game 7, they gave up a really big run where they went down, I think, 18 points. And I don't know if you noticed it, but there was a point with about between 8 minutes to go and 4 minutes to go where they were chipping away at the game, at the lead. And you thought to yourself, oh my God, here we go again. The Pacers are going to make another miraculous comeback, this time without their best player. The luck ran out. They couldn't make the shots. The Thunder defense was just too strong. And also the Thunder made some threes down the stretch. The other big key, other than the injuries and the magic of the Pacers, is SGA and Jalen Williams being a great two-man game. Turnovers. The team that turned the ball over the most lost the game almost every single time, except for game one. Game one was the one where Indiana turned the ball over like crazy, and they still came back and won the game. Every other game,
off a last second.
right? But also OKC kind of choked that one, to be quite honest with you. Every other game, the team that turned the ball over the most lost. OKC turned the ball over 21 times in game 6. They got blown out in game 6. They go to game 7. I think Indiana's, I want to say they committed 17 to 20 turnovers. I mean, you can't come back from that, And also, I think OKC only committed 2 turnovers in the second half.
Indiana had 21 turnovers.
Right. And I think OKC had maybe 2, and that was in garbage time in the second half.
Oklahoma City had 7 total turnovers.
I mean, that was the difference. That was the difference. Defense was the difference there. And congratulations to them. I'll say this. If Jalen Williams plays that well in big time games, it's a wrap. Like, there's not a lot of teams that are going to beat them. There's not a lot of teams at them, especially the older teams, that can physically match up with them, because they're going to rough them up. And these star players that are long in the tooth are going to get injured.
Here's the thing, though. The dynasty, blah, blah, blah. When Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren both get their max deals, and then SGA is on his super max, there goes all your money for everybody else. And as we've seen, that model is not sustainable in the NBA anymore. So
yeah, they got one more year that where
they're so young. Yeah, they're not keeping this team together for 5 years. Boston thought that last year, and next year.
Well, I'm not saying that, Adam. What I'm saying is that it's going to be a wrap for at least a couple of years. Where if they have this taste of victory of gold this young, and they can follow it up and stay ahead of the Joneses, and they don't have to overpay to try to keep the core together, they're going to probably be the favorites to win the championship for probably the next 2 seasons. And then obviously the Halliburton injury on the East side, that really muddies things up. I don't want to sit here and talk about the NBA finals and try to say, oh, well, what does this mean for the Knicks and the Celtics? Fuck them. They didn't make the finals. The Pacers did. And then I'll say this. Everybody knows how ESPN got absolutely muddied for their terrible coverage, and they deserved it. This was a C- effort by ESPN/ABC/Disney across the board. The announcing, the pre and post game, it was the drizzling shits. Did I enjoy the product of the NBA finals entertainment wise? No. Did I enjoy the execution of the teams? Yes. I thought both teams played really, really well overall.
But you are a hardcore fan. You're supposed to.
I don't think it's just hardcore fans. I think basketball fans could have enjoyed that if they watched it.
You're supposed to get the casual fan in for the championship, and ESPN did a terrible job.
Yeah, and the Thunder are not the most aesthetic. Here's the thing. A team that plays defense first is not going to be aesthetically pleasing. That's why I think some people started leaning on the Pacers more, because they were more offensively driven. The trick about Rick Carlisle is they were throwing a lot of different defensive looks at the Thunder to keep them off balance. That's what sort of kept them going in the series, to the point that it went 7 games. They just they kept throwing all these wrinkles at OKC that they weren't ready for. And Oklahoma City's offense is not very creative. It's actually pretty one-dimensional. It's either Jalen Williams scores or SGA scores. Now, can they keep that up next year? Absolutely, because they have so much depth. Chet Holmgren, a mixed bag. He had games where he was awesome, had 5 blocks in game 7. Game 6, he looked horrible. He looked winded against Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. So with the Thunder, there's still obviously room to grow, but that's the scary thing. There's room to grow, and they won an NBA championship.
There is. Congratulations to them. But like everything else, let's move on to other topics.
Yep, in the finals, that's finally over. Now we have to move on to the draft. It's one of these rare things, Adam. It happens. We haven't had too many game sevens in our history. In fact, in the history of our podcast, we've had two. This year's in 2016. But there are these scenarios where you have game seven of the finals, and literally within 3 days, you have to turn around and go to New York for the NBA draft. And this is one of those years.
And as I complained about the finals, for a draft that was supposed to be this huge wealth of talent and it's so deep this year, nobody cares about it at all. It could have been once Dallas got the pick, everyone's like, yeah, I'm Dallas, San Antonio.
I didn't see it that way. I know a lot of people were talking it up, and that's their job as draft gurus. I didn't see it that way. I just really saw it as flag, and then there's a little bit of a drop off there after that. Once you're in the lottery, flag's obviously going number one in the Mavericks. That was, I mean, it was practically announced when they won the lottery, which also had a lot of conspiracy theories on top of that. It does look like conventional wisdom is saying that unless the Sixers try to make a pitch to jump in at 2, that the Spurs are going to keep the second pick and they're going to probably take Dylan Harper, the guard from Rutgers.
Yeah, and there's been very little hype of Dylan from Rutgers.
He's a rock solid guard. He's
Dylan Harper.
bigger than people think. He's like his brother, I believe, is Ron Jr. He's taller than Ron Jr. He's more the size of his dad, Ron was, but he's got very good skills. I think some people are complaining that the Spurs don't need a guard. I would just say just take the best player available.
That's what they're doing, and it is not. It will create the Harden Oklahoma
Say
City
Fox gets hurt. Say Fox tears his ACL. Then you got Dylan Harper.
Oh yeah, you take the best player available and you figure it out later. That's the same way Sacramento had Fox, and then they got Halliburton, and then they got Davion Mitchell. It's like
I don't even want to think about that.
Like you took 3 in the same year at the same time in the mid two.
One of the most cursed trades of all time.
And the same time in the 2000s when Atlanta took small forward / power forwards every year. And like, what are you doing? Why?
The intrigue is at 3 because of two things. Number one, what will the Sixers do? Yes, there is, because they don't know what will the Sixers do. Will they try to trade out of it to get a star because some team desperately wants to jump in? And then the whole thing involving Ace Bailey basically ghosting teams for workouts because supposedly he has a promise somewhere between 4 and 6. So a lot of people don't think he's going to go third.
But I'm saying every year it used to be there's Scoot Henderson. We have the Thompson twins, and there's always like 5-6 names people would know. Here it's just you have Harper and Flag. Nobody knows who VJ Edgecombe is. Nobody knows who like you said, Bailey or Johnson.
Yeah, like there's not a familiarity with them. I get what you mean.
No, there's been no hyping of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. Again, ESPN. Well, we need to talk about Durant as opposed to let's build up some name. I don't.
Yeah, but if you go into the nuts and bolts of draft, third, I can see Edgecombe going there to Philly if Philly stays there. I've been a fan of him since he got ready to start his one college year at Baylor. So I'm a fan of him. Very athletic. His shooting definitely needs to improve. Trey Johnson is a microwave. He's a guy who can just go off at guard at any point. Some people have him for Charlotte. Utah, I don't know what they're going to do. A lot of people have Con Knipple shooting up the boards. What do you see there?
Because you got to take the highest ranked white guy. It's not Cooper Flag.
Yeah, it could be just Johnson going to Utah and Knipple going to Charlotte. And some people say, well, of course the Hornets took a Duke guy, that kind of thing, because they already took Mark Williams years ago. I think the intrigue will be after that if Bailey falls past 6. Because if he falls past 6, that means he didn't have a promise.
Well, if he falls past 6, he's obviously going to pick up 7th or 8th
by the Pelicans or the Nets, right?
And the Pelicans would love for him to fall there.
Yeah, from the local beat, I've heard that the team that the player they're keyed in on is Derek Queen, a center from Maryland, a one and done guy. The other players, like there's some interesting names. Yakuchunas, the point guard from Illinois, I saw him play. Defensively, he's terrible, but offensively, he's solid. I've seen very differing opinions about Jeremiah Fears. Some people think he's going to drop out the lottery.
And that's the same thing people said about Derek Queen. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no consensus on anything, it seems, anymore, especially after the NFL draft,
Well,
where
has there ever been consensus after 5 for real?
there's been a surprise or two, but there's been a general range. I haven't seen, like, again, you have Queen, like you said, he seems to go, he could go anywhere between 5 and 18.
And it's a weaker international field for sure. The funny part is that there are 2 of them, but they're both named Noah. No, one is NOA. I'm gonna butcher his name, but it's a Sengi, and then the other one is named Noah Penda. So those are 2 of them, but there's not that many. And there's another French guy named Berenger, but there's not that many international prospects that are going to go in the first round this year. So it's all college guys.
It's all college guys, and most of them went back to get the NIL money.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I feel like a lot of them went. Is that what you mean? That a lot of them went back to college for the next season?
Like
Is what you mean?
Yaxel,
Lundenberg.
and
Yeah, I agree with you. I got confused, but yeah, I agree with you that there's a lot of players who they had a shot, but they didn't get the tag. They didn't get that tag from the scouts of like you're definitely going first round, like Cedric
it's not
Towers
even
did.
first round. It's more like you're not going top 20.
Yeah, and they just go back for for whatever millions they
Go
get
back
offered.
for 3 million. Like, okay.
Yeah, I mean all the names. I mean, I watch college basketball, but they're all very obviously very flawed. Jace Richardson, not a great shooter, but he's got a little bit of that game that his dad Jason has, where he's sneaky athletic. Igor Demon also cannot shoot, but he has good point guard skills. Walter Clayton Jr. was the best player in the national championship game, but he's so small. I can see him though going in the first round. I mean, are there some players that intrigue you?
The intriguing ones are Queen, because I could see him going the Michael Sweeney route and just getting lazy and not want to do anything.
His weight does seem to fluctuate. He looks like one of those guys like it's like you could either be Miles Turner, and if you you get your body fat right, you might wind up being a really good NBA center, or you could be Renardo Sidney and you just flop out of the league.
Yeah, motivation seems like Luca,
Mhm.
the Dallas
He's
reason.
got a very nice jump shot, and he's actually quick off the dribble. I like Malawak, the center from Duke. He's a power guy.
He is rising up the boards as well. Um, I don't really have much. I don't have surprise, picks this year other
The
than
one in
Queen.
college who I thought was a grown man was Nate Clifford from Colorado State, and some people have him going in the lottery, kind of like right on the fringe.
I think you're one of the few. I don't know. Obviously, we seem to have different scouting reports, because I was like, I did not see him anywhere near the teens, and you're like, nope, he's
I
there.
I think Clifford's gonna go like middle of the first round at the worst, and then Collie Murray Boyles. A lot of these players that no one really saw: Drake Powell at North Carolina, Will Riley at Illinois, who played with Yakachunas, but nobody could name him out of a lineup. And it was a very nameless crop in this first round. It wasn't the deepest.
See,
It
that
was
was one.
basically flag or nothing.
Murray Boyles, he went from like 8th or 9th, 10th to
Because
like
South Carolina
20th
was
now.
bad because the SEC was historically good and South Carolina was the worst team.
It's just the evaluations, like people, I don't know, it could just be that, or like lots of teams don't have picks anymore. So
what do you think of Ace Bailey's strategy in going into the draft?
you gotta listen to the right people. It's not his fault. You could go back to Shedeur
Some people are
Sanders.
comparing him to Josh Jackson. I don't see it that way. I don't think he's that stupid. Like he's gonna wind up on a team he wants to play for, whether it be Charlotte, whether it be Washington.
Please explain the Josh Jackson thing to me.
Well, Josh Jackson refused to work out for one of the top 2 picks. And that's why he fell to Phoenix at 4, correct?
Yes, he fell to 4.
Yeah. If he had just worked out, the Celtics may have taken him.
No, Celtics wanted Tatum the whole time. He was number 1. Lonzo Ball was obviously promised to the Lakers prior to anything, and then Fultz was the de facto, got a tank for Fultz. So the first 3 were kind of all set. I mean, Jackson could have come in, but the reports where Tatum's workout was so good, they were like, we could get him at 3.
Maybe for Bailey and his management, they just didn't want to go to one of those teams that are trying to make the playoffs and they don't have minutes for a rookie like Dallas and San Antonio and Philadelphia. So they were like, let's just go to a bad team and
Well,
you can get your
there's
minutes.
nothing wrong with that strategy of I want to be the focal point, I want to be the leader, and then you see Reed Shepard at third who gets like
He
30
barely
D and
played. Now we talked about the trade that just happened. Like now he might get some playing time, you know?
yeah, now he will, but I can see, I want to be the leader. Then again, he also chose to go to Rutgers, which was not a good program, and it showed that it wasn't a good program, even getting it to two top three players.
The interesting ones involve the Nets. They have 4 firsts. Not all. I mean, the only thing that sucked for the Nets is that their highest pick of the 4 is 8th. So if they want to move up, they can try by bundling some of those together. And then the teams that have more than one pick in the first round are the Hawks, the Heat, the Wizards, the Thunder, the Suns, the Spurs, and the Jazz.
Who realistically can the Nets trade up to? Like, Philly doesn't need more picks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do, but
and did I mention the Pelicans? The Pelicans also have 2 picks.
I was gonna say Philly can use a picks, but I think they're in a win now mode, so they might trade. I don't.
I think Atlanta's
that.
going to try to move up.
But the
I
only
think
one I
they're in a
see
soft.
is
They're like on the fringe of the soft reboot where they might just trade Trae Young.
like I don't see Washington wanting to trade down for the sake of more picks when you could get
I
a
think
player.
they're happy. I think they're happy waiting at 6 for Bailey. If
The
he's
only
there.
one I can think of is the Pelicans at 7, and I don't know why they would want to move down from 7 to 8th because the Pelicans are just a.
It depends
mess.
on they're now run by Joe Dumars. It depends on if he likes somebody. If he wants to move up. He's had a history of trying to move up and down the draft at times. So we'll see. I can see movement for sure. We already talked about trades that involve draft picks getting sent over, like the Magic, getting or the Memphis pick and all that kind of stuff. So like we've seen things happen already. The Suns, I think, are just happy to get a young player. I think they're just happy to not have to rely on some superstar veteran that doesn't fit well with Devin Booker.
Veteran minimums, the only ones who are willing to sign for nothing.
Well, they got to get something. Now that they're a 10, they can do something. And then they have the 29th pick. What they do with that, I have no idea. But
hey, that's a body that
Mhm.
they could develop that. That's
the Bulls have a they just signed an extension for Billy Donovan. So they want to go faster. The Blazers had a good outlook at the end of next year. I think they're going to stay put with their pick.
see, this is
Sometimes
the one thing I'm just gonna wrap with this. The one thing I hate about mock drafts is just people don't take common sense into the mock drafts.
What do you mean by that?
I've seen, how many mock drafts I've seen with Portland taking the center from Duke, who I'm not going to try to even pronounce his name.
I think they're going to take a guard because they might move Simons.
But they don't need another center. So why would the
They
drafts
don't.
at what point? All because it fits, it doesn't mean they had him. I've seen Derek Queen go to slide to Portland.
Because they have the NFL mindset of the first round you take the best available.
But the NFL mindset is
in the NBA, best available, in my opinion, that criteria goes to top 5, and after that, you go with positional need.
Yeah, and then we saw with Portland. Okay, you got Klingon. So where does that leave Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton and Duop Reef and all the other centers you have on your?
I mean, this is a very trivial thing. I think they're going to go with Fears, to be quite honest, because I think that their desperation coming into the offseason, yes, because
I don't think he's not going to last that far.
I think they're going to try to move Simons. That's my guess.
I don't think Fears will.
The Raptors Masai Ujiri. He loves athletes, so whoever the most athletic player is, he's going to take him. That's just his MO. I don't know what the Hawks want to do.
Fears, I don't know why the Pelicans wouldn't take him.
And the other mystery machine is the freaking Utah Jazz. I don't know what they want to do. Especially now that Danny's kid is running it.
Yeah, Danny's kid's running it is going, why do I have this roster? Why didn't you trade anybody away?
I could see Knipple going there. I could see him just reaching and taking Yakachunas. Like, I could see anything with that team,
Whatever pick they make, you know they're going to go with the direction from that pick. It's not going to be like years past where we're just going to take somebody. It doesn't matter if it's a logjam. We'll still take them.
Give me any superstar that you think might get traded leading up to that day.
I don't think anybody's left who's a quote unquote
I think
superstar.
I think Trae Young might get traded.
I don't think on draft day.
Not well leading up to it. I could see the Hawks trying to get a deal done where they move him.
The Hawks on their team, I don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. They have done well with getting athletes.
They have, but you have you got Johnson, who just signed that 5-year, $150 deal. You got Dyson Daniels, who's due for a
first. You have number 1 overall pick salary for Risa Shea.
Yeah, who's $11 million hold. You Clint Capella's out of your thing, so you need somebody to back up a Okongwu now. I don't. Atlanta's another team, like you said, there's just no identity there, and if you're content being the 9 seed every year, which they are, you have to do something. So
what about that rumor that a player said that he refused to talk to the Hornets because he didn't want to play with LaMelo Ball?
Who? Trae Young?
I don't know who said that. It was supposedly a prospect, and that one of the questions was, why wouldn't you want to? Who would you refuse to play for? And he said LaMelo Ball.
So that had to have been another guard.
Yeah, but it's just funny. I wonder if LaMelo's. I wonder if these guards that average up to 25 points or more a game are just getting this reputation of, I don't want to go there because he's going to steal all my shots.
Well, that's the same way you had Paul George saying we don't need Harper. Harper, we don't need Harper. Why we want him?
Well, if they take Edgecombe, you know what's happening.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. So I could see Edgecombe going, I don't want to play with Ball. Our skill sets overlap too much. You'll have a Halliburton Fox thing again to tie everything in.
Yeah,
I don't want to be overlapped by your star because I'm just going to be. It was the same way when Paul Pierce came in and he had to defer everything to Antoine Walker, and then he just became sort of a brat for his.
And then we get to see some of them in summer league. Will we see Flag? I would say maybe two games max.
We'll see him for the first half of one game, and that's it.
Right. I do say this. I think no matter where he goes, I think Trey Johnson will be a scorer. He'll be a kind of player like a Jordan Clarkson, where no matter where he goes, he averages 15 points a game at the minimum. He's that kind of a talented scorer.
All right. So with that said, congratulations to the champions. Everyone's going to be gunning.
Congratulations to the Lakers. They're so much richer now.
I'm not getting into the details
with their $10 billion deal to Mark
$10
Walter.
billion. They did not write a $10 billion.
The valuation was $10 billion.
The team is valued at $10 billion.
He had minority ownership.
He already had ownership. He just got 50% more, so he's paying $5 billion, not $10 billion. It's just their worth.
Let me give you two things that I took away from that. One involves the conspiracy theory, and the other one involves reality. The conspiracy theory involves, well, of course they got Luka Doncic to the Lakers. That boosted the value of the franchise for the sale, and that proves that Adam Silver was in on Luka trade all along. That seems a little too X-File-ish, but I can understand why some people would say the timing is very fishy on that one. The other one that's reality is this one about Jeannie Buss is going to be the governor. No. Jeannie Buss is going to be out of the mix within a year or two, just like Mark Cuban was in Dallas. So I don't believe any of that bullshit that, oh yeah, Jeannie's still going to run she's still going to run operations. No, she's not. No, she's not.
The Busses have always been cash poor. They don't have.
This is a cash out. This is a cash out.
Which they should for $5 billion.
You've done how many documentaries about the history of your franchise and how great you are? Everybody knows. If Jeannie Buss walked down the street, I would know who she is.
That's the same way Cuban sold. That's the same way the Celtics sold. But
here's what happened though. But here's what happened.
$4 or $5 billion.
Right, but here's what happened though. Once the Dallas made the NBA Finals, people were like, "Well, Mark Cuban is going to be able to hoist the Western Conference trophy, right?" And he was nowhere to be found. People realized, "Oh, Mark Cuban has nothing to do with this organization anymore." 2 years after he sold it, and it's like, yeah, because this whole governor name, figurehead thing is bullshit and it's stupid. It's just to make the previous owner who sells out look like they're not getting kicked out the door.
No, it just makes it gives them time to smooth over the transitions as opposed to here the key is good luck because you don't want to have your.
She could be an ambassador. There's nothing wrong with that.
Which is probably what she'll wind up being. That's what the president is at the end. But
what did you think about the Luka trade and the and then this in the aftermath? Do you think there's a coincidence?
No, I don't think it was related at all. I think the Luka trade was the same way. You could say Pau Gasol trade was a. They're just. It takes one. It was a bad deal. Everybody has said it's a bad deal. He was forced to defend it, and they essentially.
I guess it's just the idea that the move before the sale boosts the value of the team the same way that the value for the Celtics was boosted by winning a championship. The difference for the Celtics, and we don't have to get too deep into it, is that there were multiple investors involved because not everybody was putting in the same amount of money to complete the sale, whereas Mark Walter obviously is richer than God. And he was able to just say, oh, I'll pay more and I'll just take majority ownership, which is what he did. I don't know who Mark Walter is, but we're going to be familiar with him really soon once he hits the tax line.
All right. For Andrew Reich, I'm Adam Murray. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. Let me see.